Well, and now something completely different, I would say, because we are childs of the crisis, different generation. My name is Kristian Koreman. I'm one of the founders of Studio Zus, and on behalf of Elmar van Boksel, my partner, and our team and collaborators, thank you for the invitation, and a great honor to be here and to present our project. The bridge was never for us just a claim, a project to connect different areas. It was really a project of creating public ownership. Public ownership not only of this piece of infrastructure, but of a piece of city, a part of a town which has been neglected for decades. Here you can almost not see the bridge anymore. It's being covered with different audiences which take advantage of its presence in the sun. But more important, what the bridge does is to reconnect three parts of the city. This is the project of the station area, the central station area. That's the former historical city, and this is the northern residential neighborhood. And the bridge really reconnects those parts again after being separated for decades through its large-scale infrastructure. This is how we found the place 15 years ago. We squatted that building over there, and we were starting a studio, and really wonder how is it possible that in the core of Rotterdam this is all vacant. Most of the buildings were vacant, and the city was neglected. And despite the fact that it was vacant, there was no real demand, they started to, well, think of real estate speculation. Of course, it's next to a high-speed train station, so of course they imagined high-rise. But the reality really was that the already present office spaces were available already 2006, 2007, and we started wondering, how is this possible? Well, one of the answers is the economy was changing, but the other answer was, look at public space, look at its context. You don't want to work here. So we're really, well, that's the building we were wondering what to do about this, especially if we recognize that just before the war, this was a thriving inner city. There was really downtown Rotterdam, and it was known all throughout Europe as the place where you can have the best jazz and all kinds of leisure activities. So what happened? What did Robert Moses did to Jane Jacobs, you could also argue? Well, something happened which is rather disastrous, of course, has been the bombing and which caused the fire after Second World War. And the only remains were actually this old infrastructure, the railway track from Amsterdam to Paris, and then the former railway station. So they could have chosen to rebuild exactly how it used to be, like they did in Dresden and other parts of Europe. No, they took the advantage of making a modernist city, car-based, highways into the city, and large-scale developments took place, but resulting into a desolate area which really spans 2 kilometers, and being in the core of the city. This was actually where the jazz was a few decades ago, and now it's really a backside meeting another backside. So, on a higher level in Netherlands, we're still confronted with 8 million square meters of vacant office space. So something is really fundamentally wrong in how we plan cities. So the hypothesis we claimed, and at that time we were just playing, you know, being activists, architects, and well, thinking of another way of planning from an instant urbanism. Like in Rotterdam, we are used to just development equals demolition. So if you want to make a new plan, first demolish everything and then you can start building, and that takes about 30 years before that is being erected, and then it's a generation. We oppose it with the idea of permanent temporality, to take advantage of short-term developments, the energy of bottom-up initiative, but connect it to a permanent strategy which more takes advantage of evolution, adaptation, and like building in intelligence in the project. Well, that's nice theory, but how do you do this? We presented a script for the area which took off from history and really tried to get into the DNA of the area, and then proposing something which is really evolutionary. So taking first the existing local fabric, local industry, local entrepreneurs, and then maybe if the economy once grows again, then yes, we could think of a global trade center on top or whatsoever. But first, what to do with this crisis? We took the Chinese sign of crisis. There's no one word, it's two words. It's chaos and opportunity. And we thought, well, let's take this chaos, nobody knew what to do, as an opportunity to rethink how we plan cities. At that moment, we were appointed as curators of the International Architecture Biennial. And of course, we got to curate an exhibition about city making. But we said, no, let's curate this part of town. Let's say this whole area is a test site. That's our exhibition. Not just us being just architects with an idea. No, we organized an alliance of parties, cultural parties, private parties, educational, local community, in order to rethink a real alternative strategy for this part of town. And that method started off with really understanding what the developers and the municipality claimed for. There were about 200 documents saying something about the area. And what we did is just to distill this in 5 trajectories: routing, placemaking, transformation, densification, and local economy. And that helped us just not to make another blueprint, but to start tomorrow. This helped us to define pilot projects, and this is what we really did the other morning, to open up the facade and really start doing this transformation, not waiting until the whole plan is finished. And it ultimately led to 24 projects connected by a route which connected the new railway station with the old railway station. And ultimately, being opposed to a blueprint, these were multiple trajectories with projects with spin-offs and so on. So that's how we came up with the idea of the Luchtsingel, which was the connecting backbone. And of course, it was crisis, so there was no money. So what to do? So our simple idea was, okay, there's no money. We cannot impose a permanent project. Let's think about a temporary road and bridge, and we start to sell one by one the planks we can compose the bridge of. So that's how we started the crowdfunding engine, starting to sell 25 euros a piece, 17,000 pieces of bridge, or a whole family, if you had some more money available, or companies could buy a whole section of the bridge. And that's how in 3 months' time, people came across having their name, their tweet, their memorial, their birth plank, their honeymoon plank, and locally, but also internationally. And that's how we got the first 100,000 euros for the project. But it was never just about making the bridge. It was really reactivating all the public spaces, the potential public spaces which were also nearby. And we won a city initiative grant so we could take the whole project to another level. Even we were helped by the local advertisement company to claim, to campaign for this project. So here you see we have now about 14,000 supporters, and well, they also texturize, they almost create the ornament to the project. But it was not just a bridge, it was really creating the route from the central station through existing buildings, a simple excavation from an existing building in order to turn a former backside into a front side. And what it really triggered was not just that people were starting to walk all of a sudden in a part of town they never seen before, although it was the very center of the city. No, also the entrepreneurs in the area changed their front sides from there, from the back alley street, to this side. This was anyway the sunny side. We knew that by living there already for 10 years. Therefore we also used the yellow, because as you can see, Rotterdam is known as a quite concrete, steel and asphalt kind of city. And this was one of the most successful spin-offs of the project. It was a beer garden which started with 1 container, and now all of a sudden they take advantage of the fact that there's all of a sudden people on the streets again, a former parking place, by the way. And also the bridge has been used for organizing dinners, silent disco parties, and so on. But moreover, it's an expression of a temporary public space, which by definition can stay there for 25 years. And we applied wood in order to be constantly adaptive, because we're still making changes as user interference takes place. Here it's going through the building, claiming a new type of third space between private and public space. And also, connecting their former ghost buildings standing there for 20 years vacant, they all of a sudden become a valuable laboratory for young startups. Also, it connects through the elevator, the upper public deck, which we transformed into one of the first productive roofs of Europe. And with 25 volunteers, we can keep this productive and also attractive for new audiences. Also, the bridges and the connections we make also really activate the plinths, and that's a hard time along this infrastructure, but really by triggering new audiences, the plinths are being activated. Here you can see the bridge going over the main infrastructure. It's a 6-lane highway, basically leading into the city. It's a 6-lane railway track. And there you can see the former Shell headquarters, because they moved out after being there for 15 years only. And it's still vacant. But we now start to see that the project is really reactivating the idea for the area. It's no longer a backside, it has been turning into a front side ever since. And with the gentle invitation, now the new owner will open up the facade on its backside and turning it also into a connective part of the city. And of course it's being used just to wander around and to really to see things happening in a three-dimensional sense. It's a very three-dimensional project, as the infrastructure simply directs people also going up and down, because there's simply a big barrier between the north and the center. And the roundabout is on the very place where there used to be the core of the pre-war Rotterdam. Here you can see going over the railway tracks. It was quite an operation to shut down the international railway track for 1.5 hours just to install this bridge. And underneath the bridge, we didn't want to be at a desolate space, so we added trampolines and swings. So now there's a lot of bambini playing there every day. And also, again, a former storage of stuff the municipality didn't use is now turned into a partly urban farm, partly a flower meadow. So altogether, you can say the Luchtsingel is much more than just a bridge. It really installs new types of public spaces and connects them in a way that you can talk about a three-dimensional city park. And again, by taking the community first and integrate them in the approach, we see more and more public ownership in this area where there used to be really none. And as a last layer, the 178 languages of Rotterdam are composed in a new poem, a city poem, which is brought onto the structure and leading 2 kilometers from the one station to the other. So, concluding, for us, the bridge is not just the bridge from A to B, it's really a prototype for a way to think about urbanism as something like permanent temporality. That's why we're writing the book, and I can be a little bit lengthier than 20 minutes. Thank you for your attention.